In an era where warfare transcends traditional battlegrounds, encompassing land, air, sea and space, and now the digital realm, how are global defence leaders adapting to these multifaceted challenges? This is a topic we're going to explore today on Tech Talks Daily, because once again, I'm going to welcome back Rob Merryweather, Technology Director at BAE Systems. And as regular listeners will know, something I'm very passionate about on this podcast is busting a few myths, misconceptions, stereotypes, and all those things that we immediately think of. Now, I know for most people listening, you may think of BAE Systems being a massive defence company that is more in the business of building ships and submarines than anything to do with technology. But I want to learn more about how it also has some serious technology credentials and is involved in a lot of groundbreaking work in this space. And today, though, we're going to explore how artificial intelligence is transforming defence strategies, from enhancing decision-making processes to revolutionising training environments and so much more. Now, before I get today's guests on, it's time for me to mention the sponsors of Tech Talks Daily. And in an era where digital security is non-negotiable, legacy managed file transfer tools, they simply don't cut it now. So that's where Kiteworks comes in, revolutionising the MFT landscape with unparalleled security credentials, including the much coveted FedRAMP moderate authorization. This isn't just about compliance, though. It's about offering a secure, efficient platform for today's remote workforce. So with Kiteworks, you can benefit from advanced file sharing, email security and customizable integrations, all within a platform designed to safeguard your most sensitive data. So don't let outdated technology compromise your security. Step into the future of secure managed file transfer. Get started today by going to kiteworks.com. That's kiteworks.com, where security meets sophistication. But now it's time to get today's guests on. So once again, it's time for me to ask you to buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to the UK, where you can join me and Rob uncovering how BAE Systems is creating a formidable decision advantage. So a massive warm welcome back to the show. For anyone that missed our previous conversation, could you just tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Rob Merryweather. I'm the Group Technology Director at BAE Systems, and fundamentally, I work across our business to try and drive forwards our technology strategy and the product strategies that those technologies feed into.
Well, the last time we spoke was all about quantum computing and its impacts on defence and just about every area, really. It was an absolute killer episode. I urge anyone to check that out for anyone that missed that. But today we're going to be talking about all things AI, and in particular, AI applications in defence. So there is a huge amount of excitement right now about the potential of emerging AI technologies. But I've got to ask, where do you see the biggest applications in defence?
So you're right, it's a massive topic. And I think the place for me really to start is that whilst AI is evolving, AI really isn't new. Probably the first accepted use of artificial intelligence was with Alan Turing and the Enigma code in World War II, where we were using machines to perform a task that would have traditionally required human intelligence, i.e. code breaking. And that was really the birth of modern computing, but also the birth of artificial intelligence. So it's a huge, broad church of technologies, and it's gone through a number of revolutions and evolutions as we've gone through time. So if you go back to that Enigma machine that was the size of a small warehouse, you then got to the revolution of microprocessors. So when could computing then massively increase in speed and power? And that allowed us to code AI into computers. So even early computer games, even I played when I was a kid, you would still have actors in those computer games that were performing with a level of what appeared to be intelligence. The next revolution was probably machine learning, and that was when that AI had the ability to refine its behaviors and learn and evolve over time. And again, machine learning isn't particularly new. It's certainly been around for well over 10 years. But it was another evolution. But typically that machine learning would drive decisions. So things like AlphaGo, where you had the first instance of a computer beating a human at an intellectual game, and computers being coded to play chess, etc. What we've seen that's really kind of sparked the current interest is the emergence of what's known as generative AI. So this is AI that doesn't just make a decision, it creates content. So it looks as though it is doing the human role of creativity. But even in that instance, you can ask AI now to create a piece of art. And there's been a famous example of an artist submitting a piece of work into an art festival, and that piece of work winning, because of the artistic merit of what was created. But ultimately, that's still just AI making decisions about where to put particular pixels of particular colors to create a response from a person that is positive. But it feels very different, and it feels very human. The ability with ChatGPT to be able to communicate, to talk, for it to extract language from you. That's really the current revolution that is making AI feel so human and feel so similar to how our brains work. And it's built on a lot of the same architectures of neural networks as to how our brains form. But that's what creating the excitement. But I think it's worth considering that excitement in the context of knowing that actually AI has been evolving since the 1940s. And what we're seeing is the latest evolution of a really exciting technology. But that does put it in a different light to something that is absolutely new and unprecedented, which I would argue what we're seeing isn't that. It's the latest acceleration of an evolution of technology.
I'm so glad you mentioned the history of it now and what happened over 80 years ago. And I think we should also give a shout out 80 years ago to the role of female coders back then. It was largely women that were involved in this.
It was. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, all of these kind of big socioeconomic changes that, the effect of, removing men from the warplace. I mean, while we're talking anecdotes, my other favourite is there was an explosion in female football during World War One, and then that actually landed up in a position where it was banned by the FA in the 1920s because it was more popular than the male game. And it's taken us till now to get back to a place where actually female football is valued and is every bit as enjoyable to watch as the male version of the game.
So important. I'm so glad you brought that up too. And fast forwarding to 2024, are you able to provide an overview of some of the applications of AI within BAE Systems, particularly in defence, and also maybe highlight how AI is changing the operational landscape in this sector?
And again, I think I'll probably this may not be the most kind of interesting answer in some ways. Yeah. Well, I hope it's interesting. But in the context of that evolution of AI, we use AI in a huge number of applications. So if I start with some of the more conventional, aircraft like our Eurofighter Typhoon, that's an aerodynamically unstable aircraft. A human can't respond fast enough to keep that aircraft on the straight and narrow. So our flight controls technologies have artificial intelligence embedded within them that understand what the pilot wants the aircraft to do, and understands the tiny movements that the aircraft is making and intelligently corrects for those such that the aircraft does what the pilot wants. So, that's hard-coded, that's deterministic. We know the behavior of that doesn't change over time, but that's still, a really interesting kind of application of artificial intelligence in a very conventional way. If I then probably move on, we use it in things like missile warning systems. So we make systems that will detect missile launches. You typically see them on helicopters. People might have seen, kind of pictures in magazines of large aircraft that will look like enormous firework displays coming out the back of them. They're the countermeasures that are there to confuse the missiles. But you only fire those if you know that a missile has been fired at you. So we use conventional AI to identify, patterns in images and in video streams where, we have these sensors that are looking at the environment to detect those missile launches. But that's an area where, the machine learning is starting to come into play. We're starting to allow AI to learn its own ways of detecting those missile launches. and then we evaluate those and the behaviors and the judgments that are shown to be safe and reliable, we then code into the product, and we use to allow us to be more effective in those kinds of areas. So that's probably two areas currently. I think we're also starting to experiment much more with the emerging generative AI type capabilities, and again, probably split those into a couple of areas. There's a big piece around natural language models, and this is the bit that you see in ChatGPT. You see a little bit of in your Alexas at home, where you can talk to AI, and the AI isn't just looking for recognizing coded messages of maybe 3 consecutive words. It's seeking to understand what you have said and extract meaning from it. So you can talk to the AI in a much more natural way. So it started to experiment with how we use that to query military systems. We're using it for things like maintainers in maintenance environments. How do I do this repair? Where can I find this piece of information? And they don't have to learn a coded set of words that is the just a verbal equivalent of typing something into a keyboard. They can talk to a computer, and it will understand the question they're asking, and it will do its best to point them in the right direction. But importantly, all of those things at the moment are what we would talk about as human co-pilots. They don't absolve the human of any ability or responsibility for making a decision. They just try to provide information that help them get to that decision more quickly. So yeah, that's probably a few of the examples to give a flavour for how we're using AI in different contexts currently.
And in our last conversation about quantum computing, you emphasised BAE Systems' ethical approach to quantum computing deployment and quantum networking, etc. Can you tell me more about your ethical approach to AI deployment and maybe any principles that guide that approach, and how you ensure responsible use of AI in defence applications? Because it's a huge topic right now, isn't it? And quite rightly so.
It is. And yeah, very similar to the conversation we had around quantum. Defence is very well prepared and has been for a long period of time, understanding the ethical framework of applying any technology in a defence environment. Because for any technology, there is a set of risks, there's a set of uncertainties, there is a need to act. We're talking about protecting our nations and our people. So there is an imperative to act, but we need to be able to do it understanding the risks and the benefits and the costs associated with that. So the ethical framework within which we evaluate that is very well understood, which gives us the framework to then consider AI in that light. And fundamentally, it comes down to the same piece of understanding the technology, understanding the risks of it not doing what you think it might do, or not delivering the effect that you are trying to achieve, and then providing our governments and our armed services with the ability to understand those risks and make appropriate decisions on how to deploy it. And the fundamental principle that we will always come back to in any of these ethical decisions is there will always be a human person, a responsible and educated and suitably skilled individual making the decisions on how best to apply the technology. That is exactly the same whether it is, firing of an artillery piece or deployment of a battleship or the use of artificial intelligence. And again, that's within a context of evolution, because we have had missile guidance systems for a period of time that will, pick up on a track and understand the target they've been asked to fire towards, and they will follow that path. So the use of AI in some of those earlier contexts of flight controls, of missile warning systems, of weapon guidance systems is known and understood. It's not taken lightly. It's very, very carefully considered. These new technologies are considered within exactly the same framework.
And obviously, you're not going to be able to talk too in-depthly about this, but is there anything you can share around what you're seeing in how AI is currently transforming defence strategies and operations at BAE Systems? And also, maybe share an example or two of AI-driven innovations in some of your projects.
Yeah, sure. I think in a similar way of I've kind of talked earlier, I think AI is evolving strategies rather than transforming them. It's building on the capabilities that are mature, understood and deployed, but moving them on to another level. I think some really interesting areas, things like the natural language models and natural language processing are making the command and control of autonomous assets much easier, and therefore making those products, if you imagine, traditionally without this technology, if I'm a squad of soldiers on the ground and I've got a small UAV as part of my equipment and I want to go and see what's happening, 500 yards away, I've either got to, stop and create a plan for that vehicle, or potentially flight remote control, which means I've got to put my eyes down. Now we're starting to move into a world where, we can say, UAV 1, please go and scout the area 500 yards to my left. And the UAV will launch. And when you're seeing what you're seeing, can you take a closer look at the house? Can you take a look at the third window? And that ease of command that comes from the AI being able to understand language makes those kind of systems much more effective to use and much easier to use. So you're starting to see an interaction between AI and autonomous systems increasing the ease of use, which I think is really interesting. We're looking at machine learning for how to develop more capable behaviors in autonomous vehicles. So how to plot intercept courses, how to behave effectively to perform that mission goal. So we've got a piece which is entirely experimental at the moment, looking at how we might protect national infrastructure from things like suicide bombs from surface vessels. Would somebody drive a speedboat with a large amount of explosives at an oil rig? How do you protect against that kind of example? And if we can train the AI such that there's an uncrewed boat protecting that oil rig, then can we build the behaviours that ensure that we can always manoeuvre ourselves to be on an appropriate intercept path? And then there's systems that are very similar to the kind of stingers that you might see from TV shows that puncture tyres. You get similar things that snag propulsion systems on vessels and disable the boats in a safe way. So looking at how we might use AI to be able to have an uncrewed asset that can be permanently on station 24/7, protecting critical national infrastructure. That's another piece of experimentation work that we have going on at the moment. There's a couple of examples. I think also using AI more in synthetic environments to help us train military people more effectively. We can do training much more effectively virtually than having to create military scenarios with real people to train our service people. So the more intelligent and the more representative we can make the responses of the actors in those synthetic environments, the more effective that training can be. So that's another example. So I hope that gives you a flavour of the sorts of things that we're doing and the value of them.
It really does, and it feels like we're living in an AI future right now, because last year was all Gen AI, of course, and as CES kickstarted 2024, we're starting to look at AI everywhere. It seems that every new gadget and gizmo has got some form of AI in there. So as we move forward towards an AI-led future in defence, though, are there any key areas of focus that you have there, and how are you preparing for the evolving role of AI? It can be difficult keeping up sometimes. It's moving at such a pace right now.
It is moving at a pace. Again, though, I think I'd come back to, I wouldn't describe the future of defence as being AI-led. I think defence will always be led by human decision-making and the associated values and judgment that come with that. I would say I think defence will be AI-enhanced. And I think looking at the areas where artificial intelligence allows us to ensure that the critical roles we need people to play, they can stay completely focused on those, is hugely important. I think that's a real focus for us. The challenges, how do we keep up with that pace? I think there's a real focus on data and security. I think we can never lose sight of the fact that the AI is always trained on a data set, which means we need to be incredibly aware and careful of any biases that are in that data set that we might use. And back to the ethical framework earlier, we make sure that our customers are aware of any residual risks that may resolve in those areas, and that we put appropriate gates and safeguards around that to make sure that those effects are mitigated. I think there's also a challenge around, even more practical one, where we're looking at developing the synthetic environment capabilities. They provide that infrastructure for us to help train and evaluate that AI before we move into the physical world. So I think the onus that it puts on us to have more digital integration, more powerful synthetic environments to underpin the development of these capabilities, I think will be critical. And for us as a company, you talk about the pace of innovation. There's a real recognition that innovation is happening through such a broad community throughout the ecosystem, whether that's in universities, whether it's in our partner organizations, whether it's in new emerging small companies. The work that we're putting into understanding and accessing those capabilities and becoming as easy as we can be to work with. We're a huge company, and that brings with it a level of inertia and bureaucracy that a lot of the small agile organizations in this space don't naturally or don't have. We're working really hard to bridge that gap and understand how we can bring in those latest capabilities, but then deploy them within the frameworks that we've talked about that ensure that kind of safe and ethical use and that understanding of risk. So that interplay between agility and assurance is a real area of focus to make sure we get the balance right and we make the best of both.
And you've talked about some of the challenges you face in integrating AI into defence systems there and how you're addressing them. But what opportunities does AI present, especially for the future of defence technology? Anything you can share around that?
There's huge opportunity, as I talked a little about, to use AI in the situations where we don't want to use people. So can you use AI autonomy to do some of the dull and dirty tasks and the dangerous tasks? And then if we can do that, then we can focus the human role on the decision-making element by removing them from that position of, or not, you'll never remove people completely in a defence environment, but by insulating them somewhat from some of those risks such that they can be more focused on the critical decision-making elements. So there's a real opportunity around making the most of the effective people, and how we use AI collaboratively with people to enhance performance is probably a huge area of opportunity. When you talk about integration challenges, I talked a little bit earlier about understanding the confidence in the training data and making sure that we understand the basis on which the AI has been trained, so we understand the basis of how it will act. And part of that, I think, then is also making AI explainable to those human decision makers. So where recommendations are coming forward, people can understand why that recommendation is seen as good. So the explainability within AI is a challenge that we're spending a lot of time on. But back to the opportunity space, if we get that, we get the ability for higher quality decisions made faster. And in a military context, that's hugely important to delivering operational advantage.
You must have the coolest job in the world, being right in the heart of this space. Quantum computing, AI, the cutting edge side of it. And we talked about quantum computing last time, but what excites you about the future of AI?
I think there's a huge amount about the rate and the pace of change that AI can enable. When you put that pace of change in line with a robust and well understood ethical framework, that means we understand how we are deploying that and how we're moving it forwards. It does, from an engineering perspective, it opens up the ability to reduce the life cycles of our products, to iterate capability more quickly, to be able to respond to threats more quickly. I think that pace of evolution that AI opens up, whether it's AI that our customers use in operational environments, or whether it's AI that we use within industry to help us design and develop the next capability and the next product, that impact on rate of change is hugely exciting. And as I said, we will always manage that rate of change within very robust and well understood ethical frameworks. But within those, it still allows us to iterate capability much more quickly, and that's massively exciting.
Well, again, brilliant conversation. And as your second visit to the show, I always end on a more personal note. Last time you left us a great rag and bone track to add to our Spotify playlist. But I want to dig a little bit deeper on you now before we go, because you've had a hugely successful career at the cutting edge of AI and quantum computing. But of course, none of us are able to achieve any degree of success without a little help along the way. So if I was to ask you to look back at your career, is there a particular person that you're grateful towards? Maybe they saw something in you, invested a bit of time, who helped you get you where you are, that we can give a little shout out to today?
Yeah, there is actually. I'd say this one's probably 30 years overdue, but I'd like to go back to my A-level physics teacher, Miss Taylor from Queen Elizabeth Grammar School in Kent. I wasn't always the hardest working student, and I struggled a little with my transition into A-levels. So I was merrily going through my A-level course, getting D's before I realised that to do the university course that I wanted to do, which was ultimately aeronautics, astronautics, I needed A's. And she actually took a punt on me and was prepared to predict me that A on my A-level predicted grades, which allowed me to get the offer of the role at the university on the course I wanted to do. Which, to be honest, if she hadn't taken that punt, I don't think I would have done the degree course or got the job or had the chance to ultimately end up having conversations like these. So, I do regularly actually think back to quite how grateful I am to her. She probably doesn't realise that. I haven't seen her since I left school. But on the off chance that her or any of her family are listening to this, then so thank you to Miss Taylor, who taught A-level physics at Queen Elizabeth Grammar School in 1992. Would go down very well indeed. So thank you.
And I'm confident that Mrs. Taylor will be incredibly proud of you and everything that you've achieved. And it's just so important, I think, to share stories like that, because most people are blissfully unaware on the impact that they can have on another person by just investing a little time. But there's an episode for another day. But before I let you go, for anyone listening, just wanting to find out more information about anything we talked about today, where would you like to point them?
So the website is baesystems.com/innovators. There is an email for direct comms on that website, but that would be CTO comms, COMMS, at baesystems.com if anyone would like to get in touch.
Awesome. I'll get that link added so people can find more information nice and easy. Always a pleasure to have you on. Last time quantum computing, this time AI, where it's heading, its role in defence. We could talk for another half hour on this stuff. It'd be great to get you back on later in the year. Let's explore something else. But more than anything, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much.
So as our conversation with Rob Merryweather draws to a close once again, I think it's clear that the fusion of AI and defence strategies is not just innovative, it's transformative, because today's discussion illuminated for me how BAE Systems is at the forefront of this revolution, harnessing AI to automate tasks, enhance performance, accelerate capability development. But it's not just about technological prowess, it's about responsibly integrating these advancements with ethical frameworks. And as we reflect on the insights shared today, I think we're left pondering the future of defence, the role of technology in that. How will the continuous evolution of AI shape the defence strategies of tomorrow? And what are the implications of these rapid technological advancements for global security? I invite you to join this conversation, share your perspectives on the dynamic interplay between AI and defence by simply emailing me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to send me a quick message on there, Neil C. Hughes. Let's keep this conversation and get all angles of the conversation on board. And if you'd like to come on the podcast, you can do that too. But other than that, it's time for me to go now. So thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.